All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the stream. It's been a couple of weeks, but we can continue with this Android guy. Hey, Rennie, Eman. All right, so I think we're good to go. I think that the title might not be correct. Could you please let me know if the title is okay? Hi, Rennie. Morning, morning. Cool. So the YouTube one is working fine. Cool. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump straight into the stream now, and let's go ahead and talk about this guy and what we can do about making it a little bit more interesting. At the moment, I think because of the the type of face that I went for with the closed eyes and big eyes and the type of very tiny sort of narrow mouth, it feels like it's a little bit, I don't know, silly. So we can go ahead and tweak that and maybe just make it a little bit more interesting than this. I'm gonna aim to add a few more details just to get it ready, as well as adding the neck and maybe an upper torso, so that we can call it a day. But yeah, just following with some of the techniques, and the idea, as always, is just to be able to show you different techniques, different ways of approaching modeling or sculpting and adding, creating stuff in ZBrush, basically. I had an issue. I was trying to do something with a nano tile before. I'll show you why in a second, but I had some issues with the latest version of ZBrush 2023, so I had to revert back to 2022 because I think it's a plugin that it's a bit buggy. But anyway, I'll show you what I mean. So this thing right here is just a simple sci-fi Rebel texture or tileable texture that I created. And I did that using just an IMM brush that comes with ZBrush. In fact, it's called the IMM model kit. I just turned that into a nano mesh brush and used this plugin that I'm talking about, the nano tile, to create this. And then I extracted a height map or an alpha, and that's what I'm going to use to quickly edit and detail the internal mechanisms or the internal parts of this robot, just to add a bit of detail. But yeah, I was having some issues with this particular plugin. Don't know why, but so I just revert back to this one. All right, so let's go ahead and this is what happened with this guy. Oh, I was looking at it from the bottom. Fair enough. All right. So let's go ahead and start with this. And by the way, if you want to follow along, if you're interested in kind of like following the techniques that I'm using, I share this in my Discord. So if you are part of Discord, it's in the resources channel. So you can just download this as an FBX, and then you can just basically follow along. All right. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start by tweaking the face a bit. So I want to duplicate this piece, which is what I have here as the mouth. Now duplicate that and hide it, and then go into solo mode, and let's bring in the gizmo, and I'm gonna just maybe reset the position of this a bit. Let's turn off perspective as well, and I'm gonna turn off symmetry as well. All right, so I think what I want to do is just reduce the height of this. So what we can do is turn off dynamic, hold control, and mask this area. And just going to scale this down a bit. It's not, doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so I have a smaller kind of like cylinder, and I'm gonna use, let's put this on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the character. So it's gonna act kind of like as like the filter of a mask, that sort of stuff. Maybe smaller. So nothing crazy at the moment, just like literally reblocking or repositioning some of the primitives and the main shapes of this guy. So yeah, something like that. I think that would work just fine. All right. And with that, let's go ahead and click on mirror and weld, and then we have both of these pieces on each side. I'm still not sure if this is the best way to go about it, but we'll see. Let's take this piece here, and actually that's not too bad. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna append a, let's go for a cube. Select that, and let's scale it down. And we can simplify this even more by just clicking on Q-Cube, and that's going to essentially turn whatever you have selected into a quick cube, and that is under the initialize palette for you. So this one right here. And by the way, in the initialize palette, you can also set the number of cuts or resolution that you want for the cube. So you can just keep it very simple. But I always like to start with this, very simple cube to block out a new piece. So this could be something for the mouth area. I think I'm going to go for some kind of grid. Let's go ahead and turn on dynamic just to smooth that out. Yeah, I think we can do something interesting with this. All right, I'm going to bring in the Z modeler, and this is a macro that I created myself. So this Z modeler and the the move brush are just macros that select specific brush and changes the material and reduces the brush size. It's pretty simple. I want to right click, insert a single edge loop. Also, let's go ahead and do it with symmetry. There we go. And I'll do the same thing here at the bottom. There we go. And I'm going to hold Control and mask these areas. All right, I'm just trying to follow this sort of curvature here by reducing the size of this. So I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and increase the smoothness and look at it without the polygrouping or the wireframe. Yeah, so that's not too bad. Let's go ahead and add some grid sort of image, or not an image, maybe I'm just thinking we could use either alphas maybe, or we can also use a Boolean. But I'm just gonna try to do something else. So let's go ahead and use the what's the name, the knife curve, or we can also use the clipping brush. I think the knife cut will be better, and I'm just gonna cut through there, and let's turn off dynamic. Let's go into solo. Yeah, so a very simple piece. I think that works, just to get a nicer sort of angle here, just to follow the rest of the mouth. Maybe it is a little bit too big, so I'm gonna cut it like so. Right? Obviously, when we use the knife curve, we end up with triangles here, but that's just a very easy fix. I'm gonna keep on reiterating just by clicking on Keep Groups, reduce the smooth grouping to 0, and that is for you guys on the 0 measure here. So keep groups, smooth groups to 0. I'm gonna click on 0 measure. Well, that's way too much. So I'm gonna set a target polygon count of 0.3, and this number is in the thousands, so about 300 polygons. That's a lot better, and we have that nice sort of curvature here. We can enable dynamic now, and we can play with the creasing. So the polygroup creasing would be under the crease palette here. So that's the button that I have in my UI as well. And with that said, you see this is very, very sharp. This is something that I covered in the previous stream as well. You can tweak the creasing level just by changing this slider here. So something like that. All right. And I'm not entirely sure if I like this one now, just because it is a bit, I don't know, it's clashing a little bit with the roundness of the other shapes, and this is pretty, pretty blocky. So maybe let's click on the gear icon here. Let's turn off symmetry. I'm gonna center it. I'm gonna go into solo mode, and I'm gonna use the bend arc just to curve it a little bit. See if that gives me something a bit more interesting. This sort of curvature, and maybe from the bottom as well. Just clicking on the green cones here. Let's bring back the rest and just check how this is looking. You can use the white cones to reduce kind of like the angle of the profile. I'm not sure if I like that one. I think it's the green one that it's a little bit too extreme. All right, so that's a bit more rounded. We can go ahead and play around with the scale again, the position, and also the rotation of it. All right, so just leaving a little bit of a gap here, it creates that nice sort of panel. So that's looking good for now. I don't know if I'm gonna stick with that, but for now I think it works all right. Let's go ahead and add those sort of like grid panels, and we can use the booleans. And this is just a technique to kind of like recap what we did in the previous stream as well, which was mainly boolean stuff and zero measure. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on a new folder, and let's just hit enter there. So I have this single folder with this piece of the mouth here. So let's go ahead and add, actually, there's different ways of going about it, but let's click on the IMM primitive, and that's a IMM brush. We can also press the letter M to access the different objects in here. You can do that by, let me just show you something else. So in the interface, you can click on IMM viewer, and you can click show on hide, right? And that brings the normal viewer. And I think depending on which which UI you have, you can change the placement, but I think by default would be at the top here of the interface. So I like to have it here on the right hand side, just so that I don't cover things with my hand when I'm using my Cintiq here. But you can also, if you don't want to have extra stuff in your UI, you can just press M on your keyboard, and that accesses the multi-mesh insert. So I'm going to click on the cylinder extended here, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag to add one in here. And obviously we are still on this area, and as soon as I drag one in, you'll see that it masks out the rest. So I'm gonna go ahead and from my UI, I'm gonna click on split on mask points, which would be here under the split section, split on mask points. And now I have this on its own, and I can just go ahead and bring in the gizmo, turn off dynamic, center it, and I can just scale it like so. But that way I know it is kind of like aligned a little bit better. I'm just going to reset the rotation. Like so. And then I'm going to hold Control, click and drag to duplicate, let go around there, and then I can duplicate this like so. So I'm going to clear and reposition this a little bit better, maybe just center it actually, so that we know it is right in the middle, and then we can come back here. All right, so that's just a quick way of creating this sort of like pattern, just again holding Control to duplicate, and then let go of the control, and that basically creates that array. So let me just replicate that. So if I hold Control, click and drag, that's just the normal duplication. I have the Control key pressed. If I, at this point, I can sort of like determine the distance, let's say here. If I let go of the Control without letting go of the click, and then I push down, it creates that sort of array. So that's just a quick way of creating that sort of pattern. All right, so now this is within the actual folder that I can use as a Boolean, and I can go ahead and click on this icon right here to subtract this grid or this pattern from the mouthpiece, and I can enable live Booleans. So now we can see in real time what this subtraction mesh is doing, and that's what this icon is indicating. So I can just go ahead and rotate things around, maybe find a better position for this. In fact, let's go ahead and do something else. I'm going to go into solo mode and turn on the polyframe, and I'm going to extend this a little bit. So I'm going to mask the top area and push this down, clear that mask, and then we can sort of have a little bit more of this grid will be a little bit larger. Maybe I went too far. Let's do it again. Okay, something like this. So let's go ahead and push this forward a bit. Oh, that's not too bad actually. You can play around with this, but it's going to be a grid with some kind of speaker around it. All right. Yeah, I think that this looks all right. So yeah, basically you can use any type of brush or any type of object that you want to subtract this. If you want as well, there is a brush that comes with ZBrush. This IMM Boolean So this is an IMM brush that essentially, when you have an object like this one that is subtracting from another model, this is essentially an IMM brush. So I can press the letter M and select any of these pieces, and these have been designed to kind of like model in an inverted way, so that when you apply it to subtract it, you can basically see the result. So for example, if I click on this oval shape and I just go ahead and click and drag here, you see that I'm getting that nice effect in there. In fact, that's actually not too bad, but I'm going to leave this one for later. We haven't started detailing, so I just wanted to cover that you can use absolutely anything that you want. All right, so the way that this works is very similar to what we did before. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the gear icon, and I'm going to click on Boolean with subdivision. Actually, let me just check. Yeah, so I'm going to select the cylinder. You see the kind of like the faceted polygons here. So it's pretty evident that it is a low poly mesh. So I'm going to click on dynamic just to smooth that out. And we probably need some kind of cut in here. So I'm just going to go into solo mode, turn off dynamic, and I'm going to use my knife curve. I'm just going to cut through here holding the shift key, so that, oops, the other way around. Right, so now we have different polygroups as well. And that's fine. That's what we want. Actually, my bad. So if I cut it with a knife curve, I'm gonna end up with triangles, so I won't be able to use the dynamic. So let's just keep it simple, and I'm gonna hold the Control Shift to select the select rectangular piece. So this one right here, and I'm gonna click on auto groups so that we have different groups on all these pieces. And then I'm gonna use the slice curve, not the knife curve. So the slice curve is the one that I was looking for. So the slice curve allows you to slice through the mesh, and if you do it from that sort of camera angle, it will basically create that loop. It is the same thing as using the C modeler, right? So if I right click with the an edge selected, I can click on insert, click and drag to add a single edge. The only problem is that because I have these separate objects, it's going to be hard to try to find it in the right place. But you could totally do it if you want to. In fact, let me just show you. I can just try to find the right angle, right? So they're not exactly in the same place, but then I can hold Control, select that, invert it, bring in the gizmo, centered, and then I'm going to squish them into the Z-axis. So there's always multiple ways of doing it, but in this case with the slice curve, you can just go through all of these pieces at the same time. So now if I use dynamic, you'll see we have a nicer, sharper edge in here. All right, let's get out of solo mode, select a different brush. All right, so we have the grid. Now let's do what I was going to do. Click on the gear icon. This time I'm going to use Boolean with dynamic subdivision. So this option right here, so that ZBrush Booleans this folder, but taking into account the the dynamic subdivision. In fact, I'm going to do it with the other one just to show you the alternative. I'm going to click on Boolean folder. All right. So if I go into solo mode, actually, hang on, let me delete this one. It didn't work out. Make sure both are enabled or showing. Boolean folder. There we go. So if I select this one, go into solo mode, this has the low resolution mesh. So that might be something good if you want to re-dynamesh all of these, or create a new retopology using zero measure. And this one has the smoothed version. So I'm gonna try first one just for fun. I'm gonna hold the Control and Shift to isolate these polygroups, because there is an extra polygroup in here. So I'm gonna do that and click on auto groups. So now we have groups in every single part that are different, and we can also use symmetry actually. And yeah, let's try this out. I'm gonna click on keep groups, no smoothing groups, and I'm gonna target, let's go 1.4, click on zero measure, and there we go. So not too bad. Again, this could be improved a little bit, but I think it's fine. If I use the dynamic now, we have a nice result. So what I'm gonna do now is fix this a little bit. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift to isolate these pieces. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna mirror and weld just to have that center line going. And let's invert that or mask it, bring back the rest, bring in the gizmo, center it, and I'm gonna turn off symmetry now. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing that I showed you before, just scale this in the Z-axis. And I don't know if it's doing anything actually. So what I'll do is I'm gonna hide this again. Hang on. So I'm going to mask this entire region, bring back the rest, invert that mask, and now I have masked that polygroup, and I can just sort of do this, which is in this case is looking fine. So it is pretty flat already. All right, so now that I have this, I can just maybe add a bit more resolution. So this is looking nice. There's some kind of like triangulation here that could be improved, could be better around this area. But what we can do as well is play around with the simula with this current kind of like zero measure in a way. So it could be improved, definitely, but you know, I'm happy with this. I'm just gonna go ahead and click on the simula and show you how you can improve something like this. So I'm gonna right click on any face, and I'm gonna click on inset. And in the inset, you have a few options. Make sure that you have the inset region, not the inset poly, because each poly will actually inset each face basically. So the inset region is gonna look at you know, whatever you click on, and it's gonna insert it. And I'm gonna right click as well and make sure that not a single poly is enabled. So this is what's gonna happen actually. I'm gonna click and drag, you'll see it is insetting that single polygon. So that's what's happening. But I wanna insert this entire kind of like blue area. So I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna click on polygroup all. So that way I'm gonna, the action is insetting, that's what I showed you before. The polygroup all is going to look at the same polygroup, the same color or polygon ID, and is going to perform that action into the entire region. So I'm going to click and drag, and you see it is also creating these triangles in here. That is because of something else that I should mention. I'm going to right click. By default is set to equidistant, and that's kind of like the newest way of creating this. And you know, for the most part, it's a good way of doing it, but I prefer to use the legacy in this case, and that way you ensure that you have quads all over, and it's basically a loop around everything. That's what we're trying to create. So you see, slightly different. And now we can click on dynamic, and now this whole edge is going to be a lot cleaner. And we can also do the same thing, you know, around this area. So I'm gonna right click, and actually we can use inset as well. So I'm gonna do on auto group on all these pieces, not on auto group, sorry, group visible, so that they all have the same polygroup, and I can click and drag and add this like so. So again, this could be cleaned up a lot more, but I think it's fine. Maybe there is a bit of a, you know, this spike here might not be great, but anyway, I just wanted to show you this process. Let's go ahead and use the other option, or the one with the, or like the Boolean with the dynamics of division, this one right here. And I'll do the same process really quickly just to do a quick recap. So this time I'm gonna isolate this group visible. So we have different groups in there. Let's activate symmetry. I'm gonna do a quick mirror and well, just in case we still have different polygroups. Perfect. And let's go ahead and try this again. Keep groups, smooth groups, and I'm gonna use a target polygon count of 1000. And if you get like a really weird result, sometimes when you're trying to create something that is, you know, low poly, in this case is not too bad, but there's some triangulation here that might be, you know, better, or that we could improve. So if you find this type of issues, you can actually, let's undo that, target a higher polygon count, so something like 4000, and that will give you a cleaner, nicer distribution, because you're not forcing ZBrush to create something that low poly. And then once you go to this point, you can just go ahead and click on half, and then ZBrush that, and then, you know, keep ZBrush until you find something that you like. So yeah, something like this might be better. Let's go ahead and do the same thing that I did with the previous one, and we can just compare which one is best. So I'm gonna right click on this, already have it, so click and drag to create that sort of edge around. You'll see here there's a bit of an issue because this is not a, well, this is not a nice quad. So let's undo that. And I'm gonna try this one more time. Now it is also in here. So let's reduce the ZBrush. I think the first one will work just fine. All right, this probably is a bit better. You still have it here at the bottom. So I'm gonna keep doing it until I get something better. You can also, by the way, you can go to, where are we? Geometry, ZBrush here. You can click on same, and it will produce the same, or it will try to maintain the same amount of polygons. Let's try to, yeah, let's try it like this. Oh, get in there. I mean, just keep in mind this is a simple automated option or process, so it's not too bad. All right, I think this works fine. Similar to what we did before. But anyway, I just wanted to show you both options. You don't have to do what I just did. You can stick with the result of the Boolean operation. So the nice sort of clean cut that we got in here. The only thing is that obviously this Boolean operation has triangles all over. So if you click on dynamic, it's going to look, you know, very, very noisy. And it's not ideal. But another thing that you can do, actually, let me just show you. So if I want to add maybe some kind of like paneling or beveling around these edges, so similar to what I have here with the dynamic, but you can do something a bit more intense, let's say in here. What you can do is maintain different polygroups. So I'm going to go ahead and let's select these pieces here inside. I'm going to turn on double as well. All right, so I'm going to click on group visible, invert, and group visible. So that way we have just two different polygroups, the entire sort of like case as well as this grid. And now I can go ahead and bring in a plugin called the Bevel Pro. There's one here. I want to click on Bevel Pro, and this is a plugin that comes with ZBrush, so you can use it. It's just going to open up a separate kind of like window at some point. Let's just wait for it. And there we go. It's on my other screen. Here we go. Let me just have a look as well at the chat. Hey, morning everyone. Have you had a chance to use proxy pose or the create UVs? So ZBrush Prime. So yeah, yeah, you're talking about the new additions to ZBrush 2023. Yeah, I've used that. They're pretty handy actually, and I actually been trying to integrate that sort of proxy pose with one of my workflows that you know, that I quite like, which is the character creator 4. So you can just use that proxy to send it to pose everything, and then use character creator to pose the character, and I think it's working quite well. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to use, oh no, yeah, the creasing UV. Yeah, the creasing UV, it is basically the same thing as defining the different UV shells with polygroups. It's just that with the creasing tool, you can essentially define where you want to go or where you want to, you know, have a cut. So it is more convenient, for instance, if you want to unwrap a cylinder, because with a cylinder, if you're using polygroups or like the previous method, you will have to cut the cylinder in two halves. Whereas with the creasing UVs, you can just click on a single seam and it will unwrap the entire cylinder. So yeah. All right, anyway, so this thing, this Bevel Pro, you'll see that, oh, sorry. Something happened here with my keyboard. All right, anyway, so basically you see these red lines that is creating the Bevel Pro. That's why it's called the Bevel Pro. We can click on this bevel amount and just increase that a bit and just wait until it processes. And basically what this tool does is to automatically find the difference between the polygroups. That's the reason why I created two different polygroups. And it's going to place a, let's say like a curve brush around it that has a very sharp edge. And it's going to automatically Boolean it. So if I go ahead and click on auto apply, you'll see the effect. Let's turn off preview edges. You see that sort of edge around it. We can change the amount and it's going to be smaller. Yep, so that's kind of like the edge that is automatically subtracting it. And I'm going to click on OK. And you'll see that it's just a Boolean operation that happens in that sort of window. If I turn off the line, we now have this nice loop around it. So maybe with this one, you can just go ahead and try to generate, you know, a cleaner sort of retopology. I'm just gonna click on Zero Measure, see what I get with the default settings. It's not gonna be great. because I don't have polygroups on the other areas, but you know, it's not too bad actually. I'm gonna target a very low poly count and see what I get. Yeah, very similar process. It's just that now you have that sort of extra edge in there. But anyway, I'm gonna stick with the other one. I just wanted to give you an extra bit. So I'm gonna put this here at the top, and let's create a new folder. Let's call it OR, and just drop it in there, hide it. And let's push this other one as well. All right, so I'm just cleaning things up a little bit. All right, so all of that was just to create that piece, which I think is looking all right. Let's go ahead and work on some other pieces like the neck and potentially some torso area. But I'm going to show you how cool this is. I mean, you can obviously block it out again. You can use new pieces and set it up. But because we have, you know, relatively simple pieces already blocking out the head of the character, we can reuse some of those. And that also maintains kind of like a visual consistency between the different pieces. So that's kind of like another way of going about it. So I'm just going to reuse some of these pieces to block it out. And obviously I will add anything that I need to. So for example, if I take, let's take the full head, right? Duplicate that and then shift it to the bottom here. I'm gonna bring in the gizmo, turn off symmetry, and I'm gonna push this down. Let's turn off dynamics a little bit slow. All right, and I'm gonna rotate it like so. So maybe 90 degrees, and then also 180 degrees the other way, like so. And you see, this is, you know, this could be the body of the character, and I can push it like so. Yeah, you know, something like that. And we can also remesh this or dynamesh it somehow. We're missing an area here, so I'm just going to duplicate the same object. I'm just gonna try to recycle as much as I can of these objects. You don't have to, but I just want to show you that that's a possibility as well. And I'm going to use this to sort of like create this or fill this back area here. All right. And the cool thing about this really is that I can, maybe with this one here, I can go ahead and use the knife. And I'm going to try to cut it in a way that doesn't create triangles. So somewhere there. No, it does create triangles actually. Just going to cut it like so. And I'm just going to cut this one as well, so that is perfectly holding the shift key, just so that it's perfectly flat in this area. It created those polygroups, so I can just go ahead and quickly remesh all of these, maybe with a bit larger polygon count, a bit more than that, and also using symmetry. And of course, we could actually isolate this pit before I actually create the slice curve. So let me just show you. If I want to recreate some polygroups here so that I can do a remesh with a bit more control surfaces, I can use the select lasso, and I'm going to isolate the entire loop. And this is the reason I would do it before cutting with the slice curve or with the knife cut, just so that I can have these loops nicely added. And let's go ahead and do the same thing here. All right, and let's make sure that I'm not selecting anything else. And at this point, I can just go ahead and click on auto groups. So that creates this auto group, and then I can select this piece and give it a single polygroup. So let's click on group visible. Let's do the same thing for this portion here. So I can hide that one. Group visible. So I'm just recreating some of the polygroups that I had. We could do the same thing here. And in this case, because I have already some polygroups, if I go ahead and click on auto groups again, it's going to give me 2 different polygroups in these areas, but it's going to ruin the other one. So a nice little addition, I think it was in 2022, is the regroup visible. So this one right here. And that would be for you under the polygroups here. So if I click on regroup visible, ZBrush is going to regroup everything that is visible. So it's not giving me the same thing that I want. So what I need to do is just hide this bit. Just wanted to show you that option. And now I can do the auto groups basically. So yep. So I'm gonna isolate this one and this one, invert and group visible. And maybe here at the top as well, we can hide that one. Hang on. Yep, so that one there, and I can hide these bits as well. Group visible. So just the usual process of recreating these polygroups. We could potentially do the same thing in here, just to be sure. All right, so let's go ahead and create a polygroup for this. Group visible. And now I can isolate this piece, auto groups, and then do the same thing. So pretty straightforward process of generating some polygroups. All right. And in fact, well, let's just leave it as it is, but you could do the same thing with the other one if you wanted to. All right. So yeah, what we can do now is, what did we do before? Oh, yeah, so with the with the knife brush, let's go ahead and cut this like so, maybe with a bit of curvature in there, and hold Control and Shift to create one flat line or plane around there. So using the knife brush is going to give me those polygroups anyway. And now I can do the same thing, just remesh all of these things with different polygroups. In fact, let's just go for a bit less. And sometimes you get these little issues here, or it's not great, so you can just smooth that out just with the smooth brush. And same thing here, and then just run the zero measure again, and should give you a better result. I'm just going to target 2000 polygons. All right, I'm going to click on dynamic. This is not great around here, so let's do it again. And I'm going to use the polish by groups as well, just to polish everything while keeping the groups. And I'm going to crease the polygroups as well. All right. Still not ideal around here. Let me see. All right, let's think about this one. So if I want to have the arms sticking out, would probably, you know what? We probably get away if I just do this, just to scale it up a little bit, and then use the knife curve again, but this time, oops, let's do it again, not the knife curve, or yeah, the knife curve. So from here, sorry, let's go ahead and do this, just to add a curvature in there. And that's going to create a single polygroup that we can work with a bit better. I don't know if I like this actually. So this is the thing, like as I go through all of this process, I'm actually trying to design something, so it's a bit harder to to show you exactly what I want to do. So I'm gonna click on zero measure now, and now we have a cleaner set of loops in there, which I think that works a lot better. Let's go ahead and click on polygroup and crease that. All right, so that's not too bad. And in fact, I think I like this to be the front. Yeah, so let's take the other piece. I'm gonna use dynamic, scale that up, and oops, let's go ahead and scale this like so. So a lot of like moving objects really. There's not much sculpting here. So if you want to move multiple pieces at once, I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon right here, and I'm going to hold the Control and Shift key just to select the rectangular piece, and I'm going to hide, or not hide, select these pieces. So that basically allows you to select the subtool that you want to move at the same time. So I can just go ahead and rotate this 180 degrees. It's a little bit laggy because of the dynamics of the vision. So let's undo that, turn off dynamic on both. Don't know why it's doing that. Turn off symmetry. Alrighty, that's it. So now I can just turn dynamic back on. I'm just gonna go ahead and push it forward a bit more. All right, let's go ahead and move forward a bit faster, because otherwise we won't be able to do anything else. Oh, it's not rotated properly. Okay. There we go, 5 degrees. All right. Now for this one though, I might want to reduce the creasing level a bit. Yeah, something like that. All right, so let's go ahead and keep recycling. I'm just gonna block out the rest really quickly. So I'm gonna use something like these bits, like the, I don't know, the ears somehow. Duplicate that, shift it to the bottom here, go into symmetry, center that, so this piece right here. I'm gonna also enable local symmetry so that I can scale it locally. That's actually cool. Anyway, so I'm gonna put this here. That's gonna be kind of like a shoulder pad or something like that. And I just realized these bits are not in the center. They're not in the center of the world, so I'm just going to do that. Push this down, center that, push this down. All right, so now we have something a bit more symmetrical. There we go. So again, from this side, I'm trying to follow this, you know, kind of like an egg shape with this other like shoulder pad. So that's kind of like a nice visual as well, even if they're not kind of like interlocked or anything like that. All right, let's go ahead and duplicate that one more time. I'm gonna scale it down a bit so it sort of fits within this other shape. That's cool. And let's go ahead and rotate it maybe. Play with the scale a bit. All right, so just a bit more of blocking here. And we can go ahead and I want to show you some really cool techniques to make it feel that it's a lot more detailed than what it is. But let's go ahead and finish the block out by adding some simple shapes. So I'm going to click on Append Sphere, select the sphere, and this is going to be one of the shoulders. So let's set that in place. So maybe there's some kind of mechanism here. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Something like that. But obviously, if I leave it like this, it just doesn't feel like it's integrated. Like it's just, you know, doesn't feel like it's part of the same. So we can do Booleans again with this piece. So and we can do that with a cylinder actually. So let's try that out. This one right here. So I'm gonna push this one down. I'm going to create a new folder for that. So it's a new Boolean folder that I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna append a cylinder. Select that, and that's gonna be in that folder as well. And I'm gonna rotate it. So you see, this process is a lot of Booleans as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and subtract these like so, and also enable Booleans. So now I can see what this is doing. It's just a cylinder that is pushing to create that whole area, and that's where I can fit my sphere for the rotation of the shoulder. Maybe something like that. And let's enable dynamic so that we can have a nice clean edge in there. I'm going to use the simulator to add a single insert edge loop here to sharpen that crevice in there, or that face really. All right, so that looks all right. Let's go ahead and mirror and weld that so we have it on the other side as well. This thing is sticking out here from the other piece, but you won't see that, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now we can also go ahead and maybe use the same cylinder. Let's go ahead and duplicate it. And I'm going to hide half of it, delete it. So I'm using the same cylinder, but I want to be able to have a nicer curvature in here. So I'm going to use these to rotate it 90 degrees so that it's facing the camera. And I'm going to scale it like so, and also push this in Boolean, that option as well, that folder. I'm going to scale it a bit more so that it creates a nicer subtle curvature here. Just looking at it from different angles. Maybe rotate it slightly so that it doesn't eat up this corner that I like. Yeah, maybe it is too much. This is kind of like the hard part. It's just trying to find the nice balance of the shapes. But, you know, because it is the live booleans, you can see it in real time, so that really helps. All right. And you'll see this probably needs to be moved as well a bit further. All right. Cool. So now what I'll do is I'm gonna do the same thing. Before I do that, actually, this one I also need to mirror and weld so that it appears on the other side. And I usually do this, by the way, like I have one side of the mesh, so I have the shoulder only on one side. And when I'm doing the booleans, I can sort of like have a look at how this is affecting whatever boolean I use is affecting that shape. But I can also see on the other side kind of like the empty version of it, if that makes sense. So you have like both the best of both worlds in that case. And I'm gonna click on Boolean subdivision, and let's wait for it. By the way, if you have any other questions or anything like that, let me know. I can try to answer them if it is very specific. Hey, Comics Legend, good to have you here again. Will I be attending to the ZBrush Summit this year? I would love to. I just need to, I need to sort out a few things and see if I can make it. Just because the summit is going to be only 3 days or 4 days, something like that, like just a long weekend. And because I'm in Australia, it just means that I will have to almost like the trip is about a day or day and a half. So depending on how I go, so I will have to sort of book for extra time. So what I'm trying to figure out is, something else to do on that part of the world, so that I can go to the summit and maybe something else. So I'm gonna try to sort out a few things, but that would be my hope, really. All right, so we have this that is pretty dense, 4 million polygons. Oh, you know what? I think I had the dynamic on the previous. That's why it was so slow. Anyway, so now that I have this, I'm just gonna go ahead and use symmetry, keep groups, and I'm gonna target 3,000 polygons. Let's see what we get with this zero measure. It might take a little while, just because I have a lot of polygons in this case. But yeah, I think when you work this way with the zero measure, it's just a lot of trial and error with the shapes, and just make sure that you get what you want. And this is still pretty blocky. I would probably go with sculpting brushes with the edge polish and trim dynamic, just to add a bit of damage as well. So this one is not too bad, actually. I mean, this could be fixed, but I could fix that manually, to be honest. Let me just show you how I would go about fixing something like this area right here. Because everything else, I think everything else looks fine. Let's just do a quick dynamic. Yeah, everything else looks pretty nice. It's just this area that could be fixed. So this is what I would do. I will go ahead and select some area. So I want this maybe to be part of the same polygroup. So I can select these and this one as well. right? Just to isolate it. And then I can hide the parts that I don't want. So these ones right here, I don't want that. And let's go ahead and hide these ones here. And these ones right there. So let's go ahead and turn on double as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and click on group visible. So this is now a single group. This looks like it's hollow or empty here, but it's just because the triangle is weird here. So I can also, let's select the move brush, and I'm gonna smooth this area like so, and then you'll see it's a bit easier to see. So this is step one when I'm trying to clean this up, clean these polygroups. It's kind of like step one. Then this one also, let's also do group visible, and for this one, just want to have this section part of the same. So I'm gonna hide this again. This one has a clean edge loop all around this one that I'm trying to define. So you could potentially use the same tools that I used before, like the select lasso to isolate this and then auto group things, but just do it faster like this, I think. All right, group visible. So this is kind of like step one. And just keep in mind that when you're using the zero measure, it's a fantastic automated tool, but at the end of the day, it's just an automation. So what I like to do is rely not that heavily on that tool and automate this type of things. But when I get something workable, like what I just got in here, I can go ahead and manually fix it and try to improve certain areas with the C modeler and all of that. So now that I've created those polygroups, I can go ahead and polish by groups. So look what happened. Let me just get closer. Look what's going to happen in these areas. It's going to clean this up a little bit if I just do the polish by groups, and it's going to maintain those groups as well. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to enable dynamic now. We can also smooth this one. Let me see. So there's something weird going on here. Yeah, there's a weird thing in here. So let's just go ahead and click on zero measure again with 2000 polygons, polish by groups again, and that gives us a much better option. Let's click on crease grouping, and let's go to crease level. All right, not too bad. There's something here as well. Let's do it again. I mean, nothing is gonna beat the manual retopology, to be honest, but we can definitely get something working. Let me just, yeah, much better. Oh, by the way, another thing that you can do really is, let me just show you something else. So with the C modeler, I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna click on the inset. So I showed you how this works. We can create some edge loops around all of these polygroups like so. Maybe one here as well. Then polish by groups, and then we can try another zero measure keeping groups. Maybe this one is gonna be, yeah, let's target a bit more polygons down that. Yeah, in some areas is good, in some areas is not great, so maybe we don't need that many polygroups. I'm gonna actually create that loop again, think that worked, and this one as well, but I'm gonna keep them as single polygroups so that yeah, the zero measure doesn't have a hard time trying to create different loops in there. So yeah, basically just added that edge loop around that area. Try that again. And let's do polish by groups. I'll reduce the polygon count. Just kind of like getting there, really. All right, dynamic, creasing. All right, I think we made it. So a lot of back and forth, but it's about giving it a hand really to that sort of automated tool. I'm gonna also have the creasing. I'm gonna go to the creasing palette. Where are we? Crease. Where's the creasing? I lost it. Oh, here. There. All right. So after all of that, I just wanted to add that sort of gap area. Now I can take the sphere, push it down a bit. I can mirror and weld that so that it's on the other side. And now that is going to be, let's turn on this path here. So that's going to be the shoulder. We can take these pieces actually, and I'm going to use the tool that I showed you before that you can just move just some pieces. You can also hide some of them. So you use Control Shift and then Alt to kind of like select the pieces that you don't want to move. You can also hide them from the selection like that, and then you can only move these ones. So I'm just going to scale this down a bit so that it covers that sphere a bit better. Perhaps rotating things as well. Nah, the rotation doesn't really work for me. Alrighty, cool. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and finish this with the, with some tubes or something for the arms. So let's block that out really quickly. I'm gonna append the cylinder. Let's actually do the neck first. So I want to scale this down. And then we'll come back and we'll edit it just to make it nicer here. But that's gonna be the neck. Let's duplicate that. That's gonna be the arm. And we can also duplicate the sphere. So I'm gonna append, instead of duplicate, I'm just gonna appending a sphere. So I'm gonna push that there. That's gonna be the shoulder. I'm gonna hide those parts in here. So I need to figure out how this would fit within that sphere actually. So let's do a quick Boolean on that. Let's duplicate that or move it down actually. Create a new folder here. Go into solo mode. I'm gonna hide one and delete it. And let's go ahead and duplicate the same sphere. Move it up a bit, and I'm gonna Boolean this one out like so. So that works, I think. So I can just scale it up and try to find just a nice angle here. All right, so we'll just need to fit this properly in this area, but I think this works. All right, so now I can click on Boolean folder. Actually, let's delete this one. So that has the, the Boolean operation, and I'm also gonna use the knife cut just to cut through here as well. If you press the spacebar after you drawn the curve, you can reposition it, and that's just gonna give me an extra nice bevel edge in there. Cool, so let's click on zero mesh just to remesh this bit. That's working fine. Creasing that object. So, pretty simple stuff. All right, let's take this guy now, and let's try to fit it a bit nicely. This area may be smaller. I'm gonna turn off the cylinder so I can see better what I'm doing. So as you can see, the complexity of this, I mean, it's a pretty simple object, a simple character, but the complexity of it is just in the how do you call it? Just the layering up of different simple objects. So everything is very simple, but when you start like stacking them all together and fitting them within each other, then it becomes a bit more complex. And that's what I'm doing here. Now with this one, what I'm thinking is, let's take that sphere and we can rotate it. Maybe let's go for 90 degrees first. And then I'm going to use the knife curve. I want to cut it around there. You know what? Actually, I'm going to use the clip brush. And the clip brush is not going to create any triangles. It's just going to clip whatever geometry is on the shaded side of that curvature, and it's going to clip it to here. So I'm going to do something like that. And then I'm going to hold Control and Shift, select rectangular piece, hide that polygroup, and let's do a single polygroup as well. All right, so now we just have this polygroup. I'm going to select it, hold Control, and invert that. And then let's select the gizmo, so we can hold Control and basically extrude this piece. So that's going to be kind of like the portion where you can sort of like hang the arm. So I'm going to hold Control. Actually, let's just push this like so. Let's turn on this one as well. And let's turn the shoulders as well so we can see how far we can push this. We can reposition all of that in just a second. All right, so that's not too bad, right? Hopefully it makes sense what I'm trying to create here. I'm going to go into solo mode, and I'm also going to give these different polygroups. So let's isolate this bit, hide that one, and polygroup visible or group visible. And we can also use the C modeler to add a few things in here. So for example, let's click on an edge, and let's use the multi-edge loop. Click and drag, and then just add a few of these. All right. Let's hide these bits. By the way, you don't need to keep hiding things that you don't want to see when you're working on these type of things. I don't know how familiar you are with these visual groups or visibility groups, but they're quite good when you're working on these type of things and you want to just be able to hide things quickly. So you can set different visibility groups. So if I click on V2, what Siri is going to do is basically enable or leave visible the tool that you have selected. I don't know, wait, this one, maybe I had it before. And then you can just go ahead and turn off anything that you don't want to see. So I'm going to enable everything really in visibility 2. So the entire set of the head. Except those shoulder pads, that's what basically is annoying me to see what I'm doing. All right, so now basically I can do visibility 1 or visibility 2. And in the visibility 1, there's one portion. Oh, this one shouldn't be here. Yeah, okay. So visibility 1. And that way I can just sort of like switch between the two and keep working. Now for this, I'm going to isolate these ones, and I'm going to do an group visible, or actually a polygroup, not polygroup, sorry, an auto group. So each one of these are different. And then just for fun, let's go ahead and right click and use the Q mesh for the, hang on, let's get closer. Polygroup all, so I can extrude this a bit, like so. And then I can click here and then repeat the same action. So it just creates that extra sort of paneling in there. And then I can just isolate these ones in the center, give it a single polygroup, and then I can extrude that as well. Now press the Alt key a few times just to change the polygrouping a bit. And maybe this is the section that the arm is actually attached to. So we can make it a bit smaller. But if I click dynamic, that looks all right. We can also use the creasing, and then again tweak the creasing amount as well. Wait until this, do a quick save. All right, it's not too bad. Let's go ahead and take now the arm. Scale it down. I'm gonna move the pivot so that we can do it from this area. Yeah. We can use dynamic as well. And obviously, we probably need some extra edge cuts in there with the slice brush. All right, that's not too bad. We're missing a sphere, this one. All right. So we have that sort of mechanism, sort of like kind of move things around, and as well as, up and down right? And I'll probably, you know what, scale this down a bit. You won't see more than this. I'm not, I think I'm gonna do a quick render of this creature or this cyber robot, not a cyber, sorry, a droid from this angle, so you won't see more than that. We can add something a bit more interesting for that arm, don't worry. So let's go to visibility 1, and now we have these two pieces. What I want to do actually is play with the size, because I think it's a little bit too much. So yeah, maybe this one gets a bit closer here, and the larger one I'm just thinking let's swap this one around just to see what that looks like. Yeah, that's kind of cool as well. Let's try the same thing with the other one. Swap that around. And I think it works in terms of like the curvature here. So it sort of like hides this a little bit better. And if it sort of like moves the shoulders up, there's this gap as well that doesn't affect with the movement of the head, I suppose. So just trying to think a bit more of a, the practical design in there. So yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. Let's go ahead and let's see. Let's add a bit more to the arm, so like it's a bit flimsy. So I'm gonna take this one, duplicate it, and I'm gonna scale it down, and then like so. So just add a little bit of that sort of thickness. We can play around with this a lot more, but just wanted to visually balance it out. Do not switch. Right. So basically, we can take this guy here, and then we can start playing around with some ideas. So let's go ahead and do a auto group. Let's use the simulator to quickly create something interesting. I'm gonna oh, this is another thing that you can do with the simulator, right? Sorry, hang on, let me just see. There's a few questions, I think, in the chat or comments. Let me just go through them really quickly. How did I apply the live booleans? I'm gonna probably use live booleans again, but you can just basically boolean the folder. I'll show you again. Can you share the UI? If you go to my YouTube channel, you will find it in there. I'm gonna give it to you. So, or you can just go to the ZBrush guides, and it's there, honestly. So if you go to the ZBrush guides and look for the UI tutorial, you'll find it in there, and you can download it from the resources. So here's the ZBrush guides in case you don't know about it. So this is my website. You can just go to tutorials, and you can just type UI. So it should be this one right here. Customizing your UI in ZBrush with a purpose. So if you go here, you can just go to the resources, or just, you can just go to the YouTube channel and you can find it in there. So this is not the one, actually, sorry, my bad. So it's called I can't remember where it is actually. You can just like try to find it. If not, you can also do it in the YouTube channel. I think it was that one, sorry. All right, let me just share it with you. I'm just looking through my YouTube because it wasn't that long ago that I shared it. This one. Yeah, it was that one. All right, so I'll just share this link in the chat. Cool. So if you just scroll down here into the comments, this one is the one that I'm talking about. So you can just click on this one, and it's a link to my shared drive. So you can just download it from there, the UI for ZBrush. It is the one for 2022 though, and it comes with two versions, one for the left-handed people and then for the right-handed people. So just click on that link and you will get it there. And what I mean about left-handed or right-handed is that this whole UI, this whole things in here, oops, sorry. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so that all of these things in here in the UI, they're on the other side. So it's that's the reason I have them in here. So because I'm right-handed and I don't want to move my hand across what I'm doing to hide it basically. All right, so let's go back to this design. How are we doing with time? All right, I think we have pretty good time. So I'm gonna show you something else that I like to do with these specific objects that are cylindrical. They're really cool. So with the cylinder selector, I know that this cylinder has 32 faces just because that's the default settings of a primitive like this. But you can change all of that. I just know that it's 32. So if I click on active symmetry or activate symmetry, I can click on radial, and that is all in the transform palette here. So this radial here, and I can set the radial count to 32 exactly, right? And I can set the y-axis, I think it's the y-axis, no, the z-axis, no, sorry, the y-axis. So you see that kind of like gives me that radial count around the object, but obviously in this case is not in the center. So what I can do is click on local symmetry, right? And now I have this in the local symmetry, and I can basically use a single click on one of the faces, and I'm going to affect the entire cylinder because I'm using the radial count and the 32 instances of that brush, which matches the 32 faces or the 32 sides of the cylinder. So if I press the Alt key, I'm going to tag this, and I'm going to right click, Q Mesh, Polygroup All. I'm going to push this up, and we can also right click and scale it. So I'm going to go to scale and click and drag. Actually, let's right click. I'm going to change it to the polygon center. That way it just scales towards the center of the polygon. So that's going to be, see, yeah, something like this. I think looks all right. Let's go ahead and click on insert. I want to click and drag to insert it, holding the Alt key like so. And let's go ahead and push this in. Oops. Right click, Q Mesh, push this in, hold the Alt key just to change the polygroups. We can also right click in here. Let's do an inset as well, oops, of this whole area. Like so. And then we can add a tiny panel in here just to make things interesting. Right, so that's cool. So you see, it's kind of like where the thing, that is kind of like a piston or something. I don't know, we'll see. And then that's for the top, maybe for the bottom, even though you might not see this. Let's go ahead and do something interesting here. I'm gonna tag it and push it down. And then let's go ahead and bevel this. So let's tag it as well. Let's insert it. And then we can do the same thing, just a tiny bit of design here. Just push this in, let's push this out. All right, so not too bad. We can also use dynamic to see how this is looking. And of course we can, crease polygroups so that we have a sharper set of lines in there. And we can also play around with the sharpness of the creasing. So maybe 2, and increase the subdivisions a bit. All right, so this is all, by the way, all of these pieces right now, they're all with dynamic subdivision, so nothing has been set in stone. I can then do that afterwards, but yeah, that's basically it. I'm gonna create some kind of piston area, something to simulate maybe the, how the actual movement might happen. So let's see if we can do something interesting with that. And I'm gonna use an insert brush for this. So let's click on the IMM model kit. That should have some pretty interesting ones. I want to press the M key on my keyboard. Maybe this one right here, even though it's not too long. Yeah, it's gonna be too short. You know what? Let's just create ourselves. Sometimes this is just easier. So I'm gonna do a quick save and work on a separate tool. So I'm gonna click on the Helix 3D, this one right here. So you see a lot of my UI disappear because this is a primitive 3D, so it's not yet a brush or not a brush, an object or a mesh that I can edit. It is still a primitive 3D, but this is a really cool thing because we can go to the initialize palette here at the bottom, this one right here, and we can change a few things. So I'm gonna try to make more of a, yeah, like a piston or some kind of like spring or something, really. So we can set these radius. Right now it's kind of like this weird shape. Let me bring in my Epic pen, which I have around here, and give you an example of how this works. Right, so if you look at the profile of the radius here that is doing this, right, that is the same thing as what is happening here, right? And I think this starting point is the same as the top, or vice versa, so it might be this point in here. But the point is that you can change this to be anything you want, and it will be reflected in the shape in here, which in this case, all I want to do is make sure that it's straight. So I can reset it. You see it just changes. So yeah, I was right. The start point is the equivalent at the top of this section, but I'm gonna push this up like so. So now we have a consistent kind of like size or profile or radius. And then we can go ahead and change things like the coverage. So it has at the moment 8 sort of loops. So I can push this to even more. That's what I want to do. So let's go for 16, so double the amount. We can also increase the S divide, so the 16, so that's the number of points. Maybe set it to 8, and then increase the this other divide, or the longitude divide, just to make something a bit more square. So 355, that seems to be a nice consistent area. And obviously now they're like a little bit too compressed. So we can go to the I think it's the offset. No, it's not the offset. Oh, it could be the offset. Yeah, we can use the offset as well. But I think it was the thickness. You can change it with the thickness. But yeah, I think the offset works just fine. Let's go ahead and let's play with the not the twist. The thickness is obviously going to change. This is kind of like using an inflate, so we can just push this down a bit and then use the inflate brush to adjust it if we need to, or the inflate slider. Radius is fine. The offset, let's change the profile. The profile should be okay as well. Profile, we want something rounded. All right, I think something like this would work just fine. I'm just trying to think that, maybe, oh, that's not what I want. Let's go ahead and flip this vertically. Nah, I think that's gonna work. I mean, I was just trying to overcomplicate things, but you can just create this type of spring really easily like that, and then click on Make Polymesh 3D. And then what I can do is we can scale it like so, just a tiny bit, and then use the inflate brush to add thickness to the spring, like that. Yeah, and then we can just combine it obviously with something else. Let's go ahead and append a cylinder 3D. Oh, this is the one that we did before. So actually, that's not too bad. Let's just reuse that. Why not? Let's recycle stuff. Turn off symmetry or radial symmetry, and from the top, let's just place it in there. I'm gonna mask the top area and push the other ones like so. So that's kind of like the piston. And then let's reuse this bit to create some kind of extra area in here. So let's use the C modeler. Let's insert this polygon, and then let's use the Q mesh just to extrude that out like so. And then we can just sort of like mask this out and push that up in case we need to, just to connect it with something. And let's do the same thing here. So I'm gonna click on insert, and then let's use the Q mesh as well. Push that down. We can also crease polygroups again. Push this down. And let's go ahead and also tag this one, extrude that out so that it sort of protects that spring, or it has some kind of resistance. So that's the cool thing about recycling things. All right, let's go ahead and click on creasing, on dynamic. That's not too bad. So let's go ahead and merge this down. So merge down, click OK. We can also use dynamic now, and we have our piston. We can turn this into an IMM brush or whatever you want, really. So I'm gonna copy this. So copy this, go to our character, paste that in, and let's go ahead and see if we can place it in an area that looks interesting. It might be a little bit too much, to be honest, but I think, yeah, we'll see. All right. I don't know. Does this make any sense? What I'm trying to do? Might not be, but yes, some kind of like springs in there. And we can also do it from the front. So I'm going to hold Control, click and drag to duplicate it like so. All right, so that's not bad. We can then later use this for the neck as well if we need to. But now let's go ahead and connect this somehow with something in here. We can go ahead and start adding some indication of details using IMM brushes. So I want to go ahead and append a cube. And this cube, I'm going to make it into a cube. And we basically have a simple cube right in the center, kind of like hidden within the face. And I'm going to use the IMM brushes, the model kit. Let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to bring this back in so that I can see it a bit better. This one has an interesting one that I think could work for that sort of intersection with the pistons. Maybe it's not this one. I mean, there are a bunch of them. It could be anything, to be honest. Let's try the IMM machine part. I think it might be one of these. You know what? Let's just make it. It's just gonna be, sometimes it's easier to just make something. So let's go ahead and let's click on a cylinder, make polymesh 3D. And what I want to do is something that can be added to that. Let me just show you actually what I want to do, and then that will make a little bit more sense, right? Right, so I want to create some kind of face in here that actually we can extrude it as well, but you know, that has a rounded shape like this. So if you look at this in a larger sort of section, it has this rounded area like this, and then it sort of fades or tapers towards the arm, and then there's going to be a hole in here, and then you can just have the piston just getting in there. and something at the back as well. So something like this might be interesting. Let's just do that and see if that works. Sometimes, it's good to try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. All right, so I'm gonna use my C-modeler. Let's use the same technique as I did before. I know this is 32, so I'm gonna tag this. Let's insert this. This is gonna be the area where the piston is going to attach to. Maybe something like that. Then let's click on Q mesh. Let's push this down, and I'm gonna use a bevel action here to click and drag, so that there's a little bit of movement in here, so it's not that sharp of an edge in there. Maybe we can just add a tiny bit here as well. So that is that section in there. And now let's go ahead and click on taper, and I'm gonna use, it's not taper, sorry, the let's do it again. So sometimes I just like, these are kind of like second nature actions for me, so it's hard for me as I design and as I show this to cover every single step. But let's do it again so that is easier for you to follow. So if I click on the gizmo, I'm gonna click on the gear icon, and I'm gonna click on the taper deformer. So that's what I was trying to say. And let's go ahead and push this, not this one, sorry, the one here at the bottom. I'm gonna push this down a bit, like so. And then you can use the wide one to sort of change that sort of profile. So that's not bad. And then I'm gonna click on accept. So we have that there. I have no idea what the thickness of my polygroup changed. That's an interesting thing. It shouldn't. I don't know why that is. I don't know if I have a duplicate or anything. No. That's interesting. So might be a thing to look into. I don't know why I have the polygroup or the polyframe that thick anyway. Anyway, so I'm gonna turn off the radial symmetry, and I'm going to bring in the skew. Right, so the skew allows you to do this type of stuff. But I'm gonna mask maybe this region right here, and then I'm gonna skew this. It's not gonna work. Let's try it again. So I'm gonna mask this area before I bring in the skew. Yeah, all right, so you have to mask it before you use the skew, but I don't think this is necessarily gonna work. So let's try something else. I'm gonna hold the Alt key and push the gizmo down a bit. I'm gonna make sure that I mask at least this starting portion here, and maybe this polygroup as well, right? So I have this area mask, and with the gizmo, I have these numbers in here. You might have noticed in my UI, I'm gonna press this, the 51. That's a bit too much. 75. That's not that much. That's basically the focal shift. So what I'm doing is really changing the influence of that gizmo using the focal shift, as you can see. That's really all there is to it. Actually, that doesn't really look that good. Anyway, I was trying to overcomplicate things, but at the end of the day, what I want is this to be kind of like, let's reset this back to 0, to be kind of like that. So we're already getting that taper. I was just trying to be, sometimes I tend to overdo things, but fortunately, I'm aware of that, so I can go back and redo it. So I'm just gonna keep on adding things to it. So I'm gonna copy, paste this one here. I'm gonna duplicate it. I might use this cylinder somewhere else. So I'm just gonna put it in my original folder so that I can retrieve it at any point. And then let's go ahead and center it. What happened here? Oh, okay. There's some kind of like visual bug. Still have the polygroup really thick though. All right, so I'm gonna position this one, and let's rotate it 20 degrees. Scale it, so it's gonna be pretty small. Let's place this one first, and then we'll sort out the integration with the piston. And I just realized that in order to make it look a little bit better, what we probably need to do is extrude some of these faces towards the back. So let's go ahead and hide a portion of it like this. Let's also hide these polygroups. So let's assign a single group for this one. So I can take this entire set with the polygroup, with the C modeler, and then just extrude that. Oh no, this is gonna crash and I haven't saved. No, let's do a quick save. Awesome. All right, so let's do it again. So right click, QMesh, polygroup all. If I click and drag, this is interesting. There's something going on with my current state of ZBrush. So I'm gonna do it in a different way. I'm gonna invert that selection. Hold Control and extrude that like so. So I'm just extruding that, and I'm gonna scale it in the Z-axis, so I can push that in later on. And just so that we can maintain a nice cut, I'm gonna use the slice, and I'm gonna slice this like so. Turn dynamic on. Ah, that's why we had. All right, so that's why we had this thick polygrouping issue. And let me just see if I can fix it. This mesh contains 166 edges that are shared by more than polygroups. So yeah, that is the reason why there's kind of like some kind of duplication. So if I click on auto group, let's try to fix this. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but I'm going to try to fix it. So mesh integrity, check mesh integrity, and I'm going to click on fix mesh here. I don't know if that did anything, to be honest. There we go. See, I think the issue is around here. But that's why we're looking at this in a, yeah, I must have done something. I don't remember what it was. So I'm just going to delete it. Go back to that object. And I'm just going to go back in time to see exactly when this happened. There we go. So it's between this. So I think what I did was I extruded the entire set of edges very, very, like a tiny bit. And that's what caused the problem. So, all right, at least we identified what the problem is. Now, if I go dynamic, there's not going to be a problem. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do what I was doing before. We can do the tapering. Let's accept that. And now let's do the same thing we did before. Oops. Isolate this polygroup. Give it a single group. Mask it, invert it, bring in the gizmo, and then hold Control and scale that like so. Flatten it, and then hold Control and do it once more time or a couple more times just to add that loop. So, all right, I have the same thing that I had before. That's what I wanted. Now I can copy it, go back in here, and I'm gonna delete this other one that is clearly not gonna work. And I'm gonna paste this one there. Duplicate it, and let's just shift it to the bottom. All right, so back at what we were doing before. Okay, so I'm gonna move this now in place. Scale this down. Rotate it maybe 30 degrees. As long as you can see a little bit of it, should be okay. And this is why I extended that sort of area, so that, you know, it looks a bit more integrated with the arm. And let's click on dynamic. Click on crease. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror and weld these. Actually, let's not mirror and weld. Let's just do it manually because it's not going to be in the center. So I'm going to reset my rotation by holding the Alt key, hold Control, click and drag, and then I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. I'm going to try to place it very similar to the previous one. There we go. So now it is the same object, so the dynamic works for both of them. And now let's do a quick save just in case. And then let's take those pistons thingies and let's just try to replace them or reposition them a bit better. I'm gonna have to actually, I'm gonna hide one and delete hidden. So you see at this stage that I'm still kind of like figuring things out. I use a lot of like deleting and resetting stuff. And you know what? Maybe we can chuck in a sphere in here as well. Just that there is a bit more of rotation and movement. All right. Something like this. Let's go ahead and hold Control and at the same sort of space there. And now let's go ahead and append a sphere. It's going to be a tiny one. This one we don't need to do any booleans really because it's going to be a small one. As long as we can sort of create that sense that, you know, there's going to be something there for that is going to allow that rotation to happen. I mean, it's going to be a tiny thing, so you won't really see it, but I'm going to rotate it so that it matches kind of like the polyframe matches a little bit the cylinder. And in fact, if we do that, we can actually, you know, clip it to this section here, right? And that, you know, works a little bit better. I think. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to hold Control, click and drag to duplicate this for the other side. Should work very similarly. All right. Now for this part here, you know, let's see what we can do. I'm going to select this, bring in the gizmo, and I'm going to center it around this area. And I'm just going to rotate it from here. And then we can do some kind of like hole in this area as well. All right, so that was that's quite a bit of work just to do that. Let's go ahead and do something a bit more fun with the neck, and then we just duplicate the other pieces. So for the neck right here, what we can do is I'm gonna duplicate it, or actually, yeah, let's duplicate this one. I'm gonna push these ones all the way to the bottom so that I can access them easily. All right, so just duplicated that one. So for this one, I want to create some kind of cage pattern. I'll see what let's see if you can follow what I'm trying to create here. So I have a duplicate, right? So this is just gonna be the centerpiece of the neck, like the structure, and this one is gonna be a set of I would say like tubes or something, sticks that are encasing that more you know, organic part of the neck, like the I don't know how to explain it. I'm just gonna do it. So it's just gonna be like a cage. So I'm gonna use the same technique. This time I'm gonna also enable local symmetry. This time I think a set of 8 would be okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna select the C modular. I'm gonna hold the Alt key and then just tag all of this. And I think that works all right. Yeah, let's tag these ones as well. Alrighty, so now I can go ahead and hold Control while I'm pressing just to extract these bits. So I'm gonna do that. Then I'm gonna hold the, actually, let's just hide it. And then I'm gonna delete hidden or split hidden actually. And that way we can hit it here. And now we have this pieces. Let's get out of solo mode. So you have these pieces, and then you have this centerpiece. So I'm gonna on the, let's call it the cage, I'm gonna click and then hold the shift key just to move it around. And I don't know why. Hang on, this. Oh, again. So I'm just pressing and holding shift just to push this in, right? And then I'm gonna click and drag to extrude it, like so. And then we can press it again and hold the shift key just to push it back as well. So that's kind of like the in setting that I want to create. Then I'm going to use this one to scale it down in the y-axis and then reposition it. So this is going to be kind of like a rotation, or yeah, rotating mechanism. Maybe make it thicker. All right, that's not too bad. So an interesting rotation in there, and then we still have the centerpiece in here. So just to work a little bit nicer here with this, I'm just gonna go ahead and create another visibility group. So I'm gonna click on V3, and I'm just gonna turn this 3 on, and then select this one, turn that off. All right, so we have just the neck, and the visibility 2 and 3 just shows that. So we can concentrate on this and work a little bit faster. All right, so I'm gonna do a similar thing with this rotation thing. I'm gonna maybe duplicate it. Actually, let's scale it down a bit. Right, let's get back to the character just to see what we're doing. So scale it up a bit. Let's go back to visibility 3. And now what I'd like to do is I'm gonna duplicate it again. And again, one of them is gonna be the structure, and I can use this one to quickly, let's delete some of these edges. So delete, edge loop complete. All right, and then actually I'm gonna move this entire set of edges up a bit. All right, so now I'm gonna give it a single poly group. I'm gonna use the radial symmetry, and this time I'm gonna tag. We can also set this to 32 again. We can tag maybe this one, and this one, and then hold Control to remove these ones or to split them, hide, delete hidden, and then click again holding the shift key just to push them back, and then click again to add them, right? So now we have this piece, and this is kind of like the structure. Great. So maybe we can scale this up as well, just to add a bit of yeah, something in there. All right, so I know this doesn't look great right now, but let's go ahead and start adding some dynamics and working around the the dynamics and see what we get. So click on dynamic. I'll do the same thing for this, the base as well, and the base for the neck as well. So let's go ahead and start adding some edge loops. Right click, insert, click. We have multiple edge loops selected. That's all right. And I'm going to click to replicate the same thing here. And for the one in the center as well, I'm going to click and click and click just to duplicate the same thing. And that's the great thing about the SimModeler. It will remember the settings. So with just a single click, you can just get the same effect. All right. Now with these ones right here, what I want to do is use the slice to just give it a bit of a extra edge loop there. I'm going to do it without the dynamic so I know exactly how far from the edge I'm actually adding those. All right, so that's not too bad. And if I go into solo mode, I can also push them in as well. So I'm going to isolate these ones and the ones at the bottom, because every time that I do a slice, it's just going to obviously add new polygroups. So I'm going to auto group this. Sorry, not auto group. Let's do, yeah, let's auto group it, and then we just need to hide the rest. I'm gonna try to create a single polygroup for the inside of these panels or tubes. There we go. Let's go ahead and click on group visible. So now we can just go ahead and use the simulator again, just to hold the shift key and then push this in a bit more. And then we can right click on an edge here, insert, and I'm going to click on multiple edge loops, click and drag just to add one more. So it's just going across. So now when I click dynamic, this is going to be a bit sharper as well. That type of tubing effect. And then we can make it a bit more interesting as well, just so that it generates a bit more of a structure, I suppose. So let's hide everything but the outer polygroups. All right, this one. So I'm going to click on group visible just to add a single polygroup to those. And I'm going to right click, click on inset, and I'm going to insert this entire thing. Maybe let's go ahead and tag them actually, because the one at the top is a little bit too thin. Let's do that again. So, and then we can use the Q mesh to push this in. Holding the Alt key just to change or add a different polygroup. There we go. And let's click on dynamic. All right, not too bad. So you won't see this at the top anyway if we go back to the V1. So just adding an extra sort of like paneling effect in there. And that's not the cool stuff that I'm going to show you anyway, just yet. Let's take these tubes, and we can actually add a bit more smoothness to it. And let's go ahead and add a single or a multi-edge loop to this area. I'm going to click on dynamic so I can see what I'm doing. All right, this one right here. Yeah, that should be okay. So I'm going to duplicate just by clicking, or replicate the effect by clicking like so. All right, so now we have these sharper tubes and we are ready to go for the next bit. The other thing is in here, we can also maybe add some kind of like indentation here so that these things fits nicely here. So when I right click on an edge, I'm going to use the slide edge loop complete, so I can slide this one out a bit so that it's not intersecting. And then I can use the radial symmetry. I'm going to tag all of this section here, and then I'm going to push it down holding the Alt key just to add an extra edge loop there. Click it again and click it one more time. So if I turn off dynamic, you see I just have these edge loops in here, and I can right click here, insert, and add these edge loops, and I'll do the same thing at the bottom just in case. So now if I get out of solo mode, and we can also turn off polyframe, you see we have this section where this kind of like fits nicely and kind of like rotate in a way. All right, so now that I have this is basically the neck, or it's a bit thick actually for the type of character. So what we can do is let's isolate one. I'm gonna enable this icon here, and I'm gonna hold Control and Shift to hide the areas that I don't want to move. I want to move the entire neck, but not anything else. So I'm gonna hide what I don't want to move. All right. So now let's go ahead and scale this down. So push it in. All right. So that, I think that's a little bit better. I still think that's a bit too thick, but you know, we can do something more interesting with some cables. Yeah, I think it's all right. All right, so let's go ahead and push this up, because obviously I changed the size. So I'm gonna hold the Alt key to reposition my pivot, and then scale this up. And I'll do the same thing with these, but instead of just scaling them up, I'm just gonna mask half of them. And then I'm just gonna push these up like so. All right, And then we can also do something to hide some of these areas here, but that could be with some interesting cabling system. All right, so how are we doing with time? We have about 10 minutes. All right, let me just show you the gravel thing, because that's what I wanted to show you, to add a little bit of interest in that area. So I'm going to select the base cylinder right here. And this one should have a pretty decent UV map. I'm going to click on UV unwrap. Nope, let's turn off dynamic. Yeah, it should be okay. So it has UVs already, and it is important for the next step that I'm going to do. And that's why I chose like a simple cylinder at the beginning, just because it comes with a nice UVs. And let's go ahead and do the gravel. So I went ahead and did that sort of texture. This one right here. So this is a tileable texture, you know, just a sci-fi hard surface pattern, I suppose, with pieces. And then I extracted the height information, which is basically an alpha. And then I can use that with the surface noise. So for the neck, let's go to let's actually do a quick save. And then let's go to the surface tab, this one here. And I'm going to click on noise. And I'm going to click on alpha. I'm just going to load that alpha. They were there. And then I can just go ahead and change this 3D to UV. That's why it's going to be mapped to the UV. And let's go ahead and remove the basic noise altogether. Let's increase the strength so you can see more of those details. And then we can go ahead and play with the scale. So something like that. Right? I think that works all right. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now we have this, you know, across the entire cylinder. So if I get out of solo mode, you'll see it just gives me that extra set of details really nicely for free. These ones are a bit squished, so I can actually scale this up so that this rounded section looks nice, and I can move things around. But you see, it is a very simple way of adding details, and it's really cool. So I'm gonna do the same thing for the bottom, see how it looks, although might not be, no, I think just one. I don't want to overdo it, but you know, this is something that we can reuse somewhere else, just to add further details in some areas. But for now, I think it works. All right, let's go ahead and add some details very quickly, just in the last 5 minutes that I have. What I want to do is duplicate or mirror and weld of a few things. So I'm going to select this bit. Right, I'm gonna do mirror and weld, essentially every portion that I had in the making the arm. So now we have almost. There we go. The little spheres as well. And we have 2 arms now. Perfect. All right, and just to add some details or some indication of details that then you can go ahead and continue working on. What I'll do, here is my square or my cube that is just like nothing really. And I'm gonna use this one to insert objects. So let's go ahead and click on the insert multi-edge, IMM model kit, that's what I meant. And I'm going to use a cylinder piece, something like this one, just to with symmetry as well. And I'm just going to use this to add some cables after. So I'm going to click and drag. There we go. So now we have these portions in here. So they're not necessarily details. They're more like smaller blockouts of things that I can use. There we go. Something like that. And then I could do the same thing here, maybe for the front. Actually, I'm just going to hold Control and duplicate them so that they are in the same, almost the same area and also the same size. So this could be for some kind of cabling, and they will fit in there. But we can also do the same thing, maybe with something a bit more interesting. like this circular fastener. I'm gonna click and drag around there, and we can also push it in. And we can also enable dynamic. All of these IMMs will have a nice, set of details ready to go. Let's find some kind of grid, or something like this would be cool. Yeah, let me just see. Maybe these plates. See how that looks in this area. Might be interesting. Yeah, I think this one works. Let's just place it a bit better. So you see, adding details, once you have the blocking and once you have something that works, is very easy. I'm gonna add a couple of these pipes as well. That could be something coming from the neck. I think we need some kind of tubing around here. Yeah, that looks okay. I'll just sort it out how it fits with the rest after, but I think in terms of the shape that it provides, it works. All right. So yeah, that's cool. Starting to look a bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and add some fasteners as well. We can also add some paneling as well. This is still pretty bare here in the chest area, as well as the face, but let's see what that looks like. It's all right. I'm going to reset the rotation, and that's something that I could use as well. And again, we'll figure out the rest and how it fits later on. But I think that's all right. In fact, we can also use one of these ones to fake some kind of handle bar in here. Let's reset it. The rotation. So you see, even with these objects that are usually to add details, you can also create something that looks pretty cool, and it can work as a blockout basically. I'll try to place this better here. And then we can customize it even more. All right, so now, actually, let's push this forward a bit. Let's go into solo mode, and I'm gonna mask. Let's mask this region, and let's push this one back a bit, and then let's mask this whole thing, and we can push that one to the other side. And in fact, we have a pretty symmetrical object, so I can just mirror and weld the whole thing, and that works. Cool. So starting to look interesting. Let's do what I mentioned, those sort of fastener things. We can use more of a sci-fi fastener. I don't know what a sci-fi fastener might look like, but let's just use this one. This one is cool. So when you add in these ones, if you want to maintain the same size, which is pretty important actually, you can click and then hold the control key and it will stick to the size of your brush. Maybe that is too big. So I can go ahead and click and drag. Actually, let's turn on symmetry, click and drag, and then it will be the same size if I click and drag here as well. Maybe at the back as well. So click and drag. So just a bit of that, and maybe one here. And on the other side, might be able to fit it in there. All right. You know, there's gonna be obviously other places, but we haven't finished this. There's a lot of paneling here that you can also do here at the top. Let's actually add something else. I'm gonna have to wrap it up now, guys, but this just provides an extra sort of paneling. Some kind of like lead for this area. And one more thing, just very quickly. Let's see if I can find it. There's some kind of like grid. This one right here. So these vents, maybe I can add this inside one of those. Let's turn off symmetry. Let's add just one. And we can reset that rotation. Hold the shift key so that it's flatter. There we go. I can scale it. And then I can push this in like so. And obviously we can rotate things as well so that it matches that angle that we had. And I'm gonna move it to the side. Need to push it a bit back. There we go. Just wanna make sure that this is not overlapping anything. And then hold control. Actually, before I do that, scale it like so. All right. Just wanna make sure. I don't wanna be overlapping anything. So it's a corner in there. All right, something like that. Okay, hold control, click and drag to just duplicate it, and then I can click mirror and weld and have that on the other side. So everything is pretty symmetrical, which I think it makes sense in a kind of like a droid like this. But yeah, we get in there. We can also add maybe a vent or something here at on the side. Make it a bit straight. All right. As you can see, it's pretty easy. Sometimes you can overdo it with details, but it is pretty easy to create this type of like, you know, hard surface type of things. And as a quick recap, we've just been using Boolean, ZBrush, and a bunch of like primitive objects. And up to this point, that's all what we've been doing. But I just went ahead and added some IMM brushes with the same brush that actually comes with ZBrush, one single brush that allows you to do all of these extra details. So I'm gonna leave it here, guys, and probably in the next live stream, we can go ahead and finalize these by adding some extra paneling, some extra details, you know, cutting things a bit, and maybe obviously applying the dynamics of the vision, adding some damage, like actually sculpting things a bit more, just to add some damage all around. And yeah, we're gonna call it a day. But hopefully, what I shared today and these techniques give you some ideas to create your own stuff, your own concepts and characters. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it here, guys. I need to get back to the recording of my extra mile course. I've been working on my extra mile course, redoing it, the whole thing from the ground up, for the past 3 months now. it's been intense, but we're almost there. For those of you who are interested in that, that is my my big course that I have online. It is currently closed, but when I open it, it's gonna be a massive thing. So I'll let you know if you are, you know, a regular here to the stream. You will be the first to know as well. Cool. All right. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully, you know, this has been of help, and stay tuned. I'm gonna share as well a couple of like really cool tips as well in the newsletter today, and there's gonna be also a new tutorial coming to the YouTube channel where I'm gonna show you how to use one of the new tools from 3D Sampler to create embroidery patches using ZBrush as well, with a really cool non-destructive workflow that allows you to update the graphics and then just change the embroidery patch. So that's a really cool thing. Just keep an eye on it. I will share it in the email. All right, guys, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.